And welcome to another edition of Carnivore Bites. I'm your host, Jeff Sherman, along with Dr. Eric Lopkin. And we'll start out with the world of entertainment. The slap heard round the world, if I could only speak. Yeah, the slap heard round the world. I heard about it when I was driving to work, then I saw it on YouTube, and perplexing to say the least.
It is perplexing. I mean, it's hard to have missed it. For those of you who have been in the Ukraine, maybe, and didn't see the actual clip that's been all over the place, Chris Rock made a bad joke, quite frankly, about Jada Pinkett Smith's hairstyle, the fact that she had shaved her head. Will Smith took offense to this, went up on the Oscar stage and slapped him.
Hard.
This was absolutely ridiculous. I mean, first of all, it was, to use Chris Rock's own words, it was a G.I. Jane joke. You know, this was
Yeah.
absolutely ridiculous. And Will Smith's claims that he was so offended because he loves her so much, absolute bullshit. Because previously, Jada Pinkett Smith had been on a podcast talking about the fact that she has sex with everybody but Will Smith.
Exactly. They have a completely open marriage. There's problems in their marriage that's been reported for years. Something happened when she gave him the eye. In other words, he was laughing at first. I think this is the frustration of the relationship. I think he just lost it.
I think it's even more basic than that. I think Will Smith looked at this as a way to show that, yes, he is the man in this relationship. He wears the pants in the family, which is clearly not true. Jada Pinkett Smith obviously controls him. I think this was a pathetic attempt for him to reestablish his masculinity.
Now, on a more contrary, I think that's more than a valid point. Um, of course, in today's world, you can't go without injecting some racial issues, and I've heard a African American commentator uh, say that it's for liberals, black on black crime is acceptable. If this was a white actor slapping Chris Rock, it'd be a whole different conversation.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the person I've heard used most often as an example is Mel
Mel Gibson.
Gibson.
Yes.
If Mel Gibson had gone up on stage and hit Chris Rock, he'd have been hauled off in handcuffs.
He would have been hauled off, shot, and then sent to the Russian front.
Right. The fact that it was black on black, oh, that's okay. You know, we can accept that.
Liberal hypocrisy.
Exactly.
And some actually were even applauding it. I do believe
the fact that he got a standing ovation later in the show is absolutely appalling, because it just shows, oh yes, we're going to accept whatever he did. That's okay because he's one of us.
Oh no! If it was a conservative black actor who did the same thing, that would be, I'm outraged. It's liberals. There's no real conviction. It's all what's self-serving. Jim Carrey, he's kind of going a little bit off the deep edge, but he was on Gayle King this morning on CBS, and he was appalled. He said essentially the whole entertainment community has no balls.
It's true. And I mean, and you know that things have gone awry when Rob Reiner, who, massive liberal, except so even he said, no, this time this has gone too far.
Yeah, you think? The only thing I would say in positive, maybe actually some people might tune in to the Oscars next year, which would be bucking a trend.
Actually, I doubt that, because by next year they'll have forgotten about this. But it is important to note that this was the second worst rated Oscars in history.
Yes, I did hear a commentary on that point that I thought was pretty interesting. And this is not the Oscars' fault. It's really no fault of anyone's. It's just the way things have evolved. there's no shared interest in this anymore. It's almost like the All-Star game in baseball. When I was a kid, it was I had my transistor radio. I was glued to it. National League versus the American League. Used to debate my friends who was better. I don't give a shit about these movies because half the people haven't even watched it. It's not like someone did a commentary like 1976. So the 77 Oscars were Network, Taxi Driver. I forgot the other movies you probably everyone saw and you'd maybe watch again. This year, I didn't hear of any of these movies. What do I care who won? I think
I know.
there's something to that.
I think it's twofold. One is there is a dramatic difference between the movies that the movie going audiences are going to see and what the Academy is putting up for awards. So they're not looking at movies that people actually watched. They've decided ahead of time, oh, this is Oscar worthy. They put it out, nobody goes to see it, but they're still going to give it an award. So you have that disconnect. But I think the bigger problem is that people have gotten sick and tired of woke actors and actresses trying to tell us how to live.
100%. If you went back in time, like God forbid, the 1940s and 50s and 60s, it was an elegant affair. I've seen reruns. What, especially during the war or whatever, and you had people thanking their parents and thanking and how it's great it is to live in the United States. I agree. That's the bigger point. I don't want to see some entitled liberal no mind dribbling on about some woke bullshit cause. I got my own problems. I don't need that shit.
Right. And it's not just the Oscars. We've seen that in sports. We've seen that, all over. When they go too woke, people turn them off.
Well, speaking of woke, you have the woke corporate woke, and there's a great book on that. Hopefully, maybe sometime we can get him on the show. Woke NFL basically have an edict now that every team must, not just interview, but must have at least an assistant coach who's a minority. That's yeah, I encourage. That's great to have. Look for minorities. I think years ago they were underrepresented, no question about it. But to actually have an edict, I mean that's a
Yeah,
little
see,
bit bizarre.
that's and yeah, that's well, it's not bizarre. It's actually becoming more and more common.
True.
But that is a problem because yes, you want to have minorities represented. You want to have minorities in the front office as coaches, and quite frankly, especially with the NFL, they should be drawing from their own athletes. When the athletes are ready to retire, let's face it, NFL players retire fairly young because it's a sport that's horrific on your body,
Yeah, of course.
but their minds can still be active. They know the game. That's where they should be drawing from. So there's a great opportunity to bring people. However, when you tell multiple, again, this is multiple organizations because it's the NFL, it's every team. What happens is you end up with organizations that hire for check boxes. So it's
Of
like,
course.
okay, yes, we need an African American. Well, let's find somebody. And you're not looking for the best person, you're looking for the checkbox. And of course, the ultimate checkbox is Kamala Harris. We've seen what a disaster ticking off boxes can be.
Oh yes, there's a friend of mine that's a manager, and they were in a situation where they had to lay someone off, and he said, "Well, this is my opportunity to lay this person's off. Been there for a long time, not a top performer by any stretch of the imagination." Went to HR, and they said, "No, you can't do that. They check all the boxes." So
Yeah,
as China and other adversaries around the world, we're supposedly in global competition with and for, they're not worried about checking boxes.
no, I mean the woke movement has shown point blank they are not interested in a meritocracy. They don't want the best people getting the job. They want it spread around. They want, well, the problem with this is if you're not spreading it around to the right people, um, and folks who are truly qualified. Now, let's be clear here. We're not saying that minorities are not qualified. We're saying that looking for somebody by race instead of qualifications is going to be detrimental
I think
to
it's
the
worse than that. I think it's
organization.
inherently racism to think to be so entitled. And your friend, what was his name, from Fox Business, the African
Oh, Charles
American guy.
Payne.
Yeah, he said
Yeah,
that when
Charles Payne.
he never experienced more racial bias. We'll leave it at that. Was as when he went to when he lived in New York. You know, everyone, oh, you know, Cowtown patronizing him. You down south there, hey, you know, Charles, give me a beer, okay? You know, it was
Right.
yeah. So how racist is this? How what an air of superiority to think that the only way the NFL, which is at least 50% African American, can't get qualified people, African Americans or other minorities, is to dictate it. I mean, yeah, it should be based on merit, and it should be equally spread out and equal and open to everyone. And doesn't it have a reverse blowback effect? Let's just be frank. You see, you know, now everything's a checked box. So you go, I'm having heart surgery, God forbid. You know, I see someone that checked the boxes, you know, Camilla, the version of her as a doctor comes into into my room. I'm scared shitless. Who
Yeah.
knows? You start.
Well,
I think it has a reverse effect. You start questioning how this person get in there.
that has been shown to have an effect. The other thing, and the woke never want to admit this, but all of these diversity initiatives, all of these things saying you must have, all these things are doing is shifting one bias for another. We've mentioned this on the show before. Yale is currently in the middle of a lawsuit because their not their hiring policies, their admissions policies, where they were accused of being anti-African American, so they changed their policies. And what they did are now they're being sued because their policies are anti-Asian American.
That's been going on for a while, actually. Yeah,
Yeah.
reverse quotas. So very interesting. We'll see how that goes. But there's also the subject of Disney, which is if that doesn't get blowback, then I'm not on this planet because you know, and who's in charge there? You're running a business. Yeah, be inclusive. I get it, but what are you doing? How many people are you going to alienate? Who
Well,
the heck is running that?
here's the problem with what's going on at Disney. The Disney CEO, and unfortunately I'm blanking on his name, but he actually did not react to the Florida law, which was right because the media's been going on about this don't say gay law. Nowhere in this law does it say don't say gay. What the law states is that schools are not allowed to teach about sexual orientation to children in the third grade and below. You're talking about kids who are 8 years old and younger.
Dr. Lopkins certainly makes sense to me. Hello, what's so
Yes.
radical? Hello, and we're trying to again compete against China and other powers. You think they give a? Do you think they're teaching this shit to their kids?
No, they're not. If you're teaching 8 year olds and younger, you should be focusing on reading, writing, and math.
There you go.
Period.
That's where your foundation happens.
Yes. These
Well,
activists want to brainwash children, essentially, and they're upset that Florida has said, no, you cannot do this. The CEO of Disney did not react to this, and correctly so, because it doesn't say don't teach about gay people. It says don't teach about sexual orientation. That means gay, straight, nothing. Nothing